Welcome to the first Full Build Friday of the Ready to Die channel. Some of you may recognize this series from the Monster Monday blog, but those of you familiar with only this channel may not. From what I've shown here, I do most of my work from behind the GM screen, but my love for tabletop RPGs was born from making characters and exploring the options for doing so. In this series, I test the limits of the Pathfinder 2e system by building characters from various shows, comics, and games, using the baseline character creation rules of Pathfinder 2e. These characters are built in the web version of Path Builder 2e.
It's time to bleed!
To kick off this series, I'll be demonstrating a build for Krieg, the playable psycho originating from Borderlands 2. The Borderlands series focuses heavily on gunplay, and even popularized the looter-shooter genre of games. The extent of firearm usage in the game far exceeds what is capable in Pathfinder 2e, and Krieg is well suited to instead focus a bit more on the melee side of combat. As such, this build is going to look into adapting Krieg as a melee fighter, rather than trying to make use of firearms. Before we build Krieg, we have to set ourselves some build goals. Krieg survived an abusive childhood to become a bounty hunter, only to be captured and experimented on, transformed into a psycho who eventually escaped containment. Despite his descent into madness, he was able to ally himself with the Crimson Raiders and steal his violent impulses away from the innocent. His primary skill is the Buzz-Axe Rampage, which prompts him to draw the eponymous weapon, a one-handed axe with the head of a circular saw, while massively increasing both his melee damage and speed. Each kill earned while in this state restores his health. Additionally, Krieg has 3 skill trees that he can build into, though many of the skills from them focus on firearm usage, which, once again, is not the core concept of this build. First up is the Bloodlust skill tree, which seems to have the greatest focus on utilizing guns. However, there is Taste of Blood, which causes Krieg to build up damage reductions as he earns kills during a Buzz-Axe Rampage. The Mania tree is a bit friendlier to our melee build, and is themed around high risk with high reward options. Empty the Rage increases melee damage considerably when Krieg's shield is depleted or his magazine is empty. Thrill the Kill converts overkill damage into health, and its capstone ability is Release the Beast, which empowers Buzz-Axe Rampage, giving him even greater melee damage and damage reduction while enraged. Krieg's final skill tree is Hellborn, which is my favorite for 2 reasons. It's all about fire, and all of the skills are alliterative. Hellborn is, like I said, all about wielding the fire element, and has some focus on lighting Krieg himself aflame. The most notable skill from this tree is Hellfire Halitosis, which replaces Krieg's melee attack with a breath weapon. With our concept in place, let's make like suffering and build some character. We'll start with the ABCs of character creation: ancestry, background, and class. Usually, I try to match a character's ancestry to what they are, but at times, the mechanical need outweighs matching the aesthetics. For this reason, Krieg uses the Orc ancestry, with the Holdscarred heritage reflecting the experiments that twisted him into a psycho. The fight for your life mechanic from Borderlands is realized by the Orc Ferocity feat, allowing him to continue the fight even when he should be dead. The Bounty Hunter background harkens back to Krieg's time before the experiments and gives him survival as well as the Experience Tracker's skill feat. In what is likely a surprise to no one, Krieg's class will be Barbarian, making use of the Dragon Instinct, for which I like red or gold the best, giving him fire per his Hellborn skill tree. Rage itself works fantastically to represent Buzz-Axe Rampage, providing extra health and damage, and the speed increase comes, at least at first level, from Sudden Charge. Not the most coherent of individuals, Krieg's skills are a little limited. Barbarian makes him trained in athletics, and he'll also pick up acrobatics, intimidation, and stealth. Equipment-wise, Krieg represents his Buzz-Axe with a Battle Axe, leaving him with a free hand to employ other tactics. For this build's skills, we will prioritize athletics to take advantage of his one-handed fighting style, intimidation to demoralize and debuff enemies, and survival to manage in the harsh environment Krieg lives in. This build is unable to squeeze in a Raging Intimidation feat, meaning that Krieg will need to demoralize before he rages if he wants to use that skill. At 2nd level, Furious Finish captures some of the idea of Empty the Rage, ending Krieg's rage and any temp HP it has to bolster his damage instead. For skill feats, since Krieg will have a free hand, he'll make use of Titan Wrestler to tangle with larger enemies. 3rd level gives Krieg the Fleet General feat to increase his movement speed, further matching Buzz-Axe Rampage. He then expands on this even further with 4th level's Fast Movement, pumping his speed up to 40 feet while he's raging. This gives him an 80-foot range with his sudden charge. At 5th level, Krieg expands on his ability boosts while grabbing Victorious Vigor from his Ancestry feats, which helps fulfill the fantasy of health regain from the Buzzsack's Rampage, though this only provides a smattering of temporary hit points. This unfortunately is the closest we can get to the restoring health effects from that skill or Thrill of the Kill, since restoring that much health from an offensive action is found more in the purview of spells. On the topic of the Buzzaxe, Krieg can use his 7th level general feat to take Ancestral Paragon, which grants him an extra 1st level Ancestry feat, a type of feat that he is a little starved for. In this instance, he'll use it to pick up Orc Weapon Familiarity, which he will use to swap out his Battle Axe for an Orc Neck Splitter. Aside from sounding nastier, the only thing this does mechanically is add the Forceful trait to Krieg's strikes, netting him a little extra damage on subsequent attacks. With level 6 comes Dragon's Rage Breath, so that Krieg can unleash his Hellfire Halitosis, blasting out a cone of fire. Level 8 Scouring Rage is intended to further play into the Hellborn tree, slightly referencing the homing fireballs of Raving Retribution. And the spirit of high risk, high reward effects of the Mania tree, Krieg takes Come and Get Me, leaving himself vulnerable, but able to reap terrible vengeance upon his enemies. I have a bit of an issue with this feat, mainly with its effects lasting until the end of the rage, but we do have a bit of a way to solve that. If Krieg realizes that he's in a bad way with the flat-footed and extra damage he's taking from this feat, he can end his rage early with Furious Finish. This does leave him fatigued, but he should be better off defensively than when he was in his rage. In total honesty, I took 12th level's Embrace the Pain, almost entirely because it has the same name as a skill from Krieg's Mania tree. However, it works well with Krieg's one-handed fighting style, focus on athletics, and feats such as Titan Wrestler, so I kept it around, at least for a little bit. From his Orc ancestry, Krieg gains Incredible Ferocity at 13th level, which changes Orc Ferocity's frequency to once per hour, and allows Krieg to fight for his life a little more regularly. Level 14 features something of an upgrade to Embrace the Pain. There might be cases where Embrace the Pain is still preferable, but generally the attack from Vengeful Strike should be handier, especially if he's using Come and Get Me. With that being the case, you may want to consider retraining Embrace the Pain for Raging Intimidation. On the side of skill feats, Krieg can pick up Battle Cry to start a fight with one of his Growl non-sequiturs, demoralizing enemies before his rage prevents him from doing so. Reckless Abandon comes online at 16th level, giving Krieg a way to become even deadlier. This can only be triggered when Krieg is at half health or lower, which makes it a great fit to represent the Capstone Mania skill, Release the Beast, which can only be triggered at 33% health. Hopefully, the terrifying resistance Krieg picked up earlier will help offset the lowered saves from Reckless Abandon. The 17th level Rampaging Ferocity from his Orc ancestry is another good example of fight for your life and probably comes the closest to it, letting him take a swing to keep himself on his feet. Krieg's a scary dude, prone to mad gibbering and frothing, which is enough for me to justify taking Terrifying Howl on him at 18th level. Again, with Terrifying Resistance, hopefully this will grant Krieg some nice bonuses against a slew of enemies at once. Too Angry to Die is another fun feat, and while Krieg should be able to cling to life with the likes of his Orc and Rampaging Ferocity, it's a nice reaction to let him demoralize enemies before he can go back into a rage. At this level, Barbarians have some resistances based on their instinct. For example, Dragon provides resistance to fire and piercing damage. However, that doesn't quite cover the reduction of Release the Beast or some of the other skills that he can gain. So, for his capstone feat, Krieg will grab Unstoppable Juggernaut, giving him blanket resistances and another way to stay on his feet. And that wraps up the build for Krieg, but we'll do a quick glance over it once more. Krieg is built as a Holdscarred Orc Barbarian with the Red Dragon Instinct and the Bounty Hunter background. The Holdscarred heritage serves as a reference to the torturous experiments that turned him into a psycho, while the Barbarian's Rage matches perfectly with his action skill, Buzzaxe Rampage. The fire of his Dragon Instinct brings his Hellborn tree to mind, and is further explored with Dragon's Rage Breath, which stands in for Hellfire Halitosis, and Scouring Rage to wreath Krieg in fire. The speed of his Rampage comes from feats such as Fast Movement, Fleet, and Sudden Charge, whereas the Heal on a Kill is simulated by Victorious Vigor and Come and Get Me, though the latter requires endangering himself, which, in turn, ends up matching the risk-reward style of his Mania skills. On the topic of his Mania tree, Furious Finish is a good stand-in for Empty the Rage, as Krieg can increase his damage by ending his rage and deplete his shield of temporary hit points. The ultimate skill of this tree, Release the Beast, is accomplished with the likes of Reckless Abandon and Unstoppable Juggernaut. I was also able to include the fight for your life mechanic from the game, with feats such as Orc Ferocity and others that build off of it, Rampaging Ferocity being particularly notable. Ultimately, Krieg is a wild warrior that comes with a high-risk, high-reward playstyle, leaving himself vulnerable but clinging to life with various means of gaining temporary hit points and the Orc Ferocity line of feats. Let me know what you think of this build and what other characters you might like to see. You can check out the blog for a deeper breakdown of the build, which also includes items and suggestions for free archetype games. That, along with the Monster Monday Twitter and Discord, are linked in the description below. Thanks for watching and have a fantastic Friday.
You think this is the end? It'll never end. The blood and the screaming and the teeth, it will start again and again and again, forever.